The sun was sinking behind the red cliffs of Bitter Creek when Elara Jennings led her horse to the water's edge. The day had been merciless, dust clinging to her skin, sweat dripping from beneath her hat. She longed for the cold kiss of the river. For months, the widow Jennings had kept to herself, managing the small mercantile her late husband left behind. The town whispered she was too proud for a woman alone, but she'd learned not to listen. Pride was cheaper than pity. Elara untied her boots, dipped a toe in, and sighed as the chill ran up her legs. The river shimmered like glass, untouched and silent except for the whisper of wind through cottonwoods. She slipped her dress from her shoulders and waded in, the fading sun tracing gold along her skin. That's when she saw him. Across the shallows, half concealed by reeds, a figure stood tall, broad and motionless. For an instant, she thought it was a trick of the dying light. But then he stepped forward, and she saw his dark hair hanging wet down his shoulders, the painted lines of white ash across his chest. An Apache dot her breath caught. He made no move toward her, only watched. The silence between them was thick, something ancient and electric. Finally, she found her voice. "You got a habit of sneaking up on folks while they bathe?" she asked, forcing her tone to sound steady. The man didn't answer. Instead, he stepped into the water, slow and deliberate. The river reached his knees, then his waist. He stopped within a few yards of her, the water rippling between them. The sun caught the faint scar that ran across his shoulder, old, jagged, like a memory carved into flesh. "You shouldn't be here," Elara said, her voice softening. "This land's not safe for your kind. The miners'll shoot first and ask later." Still, the Apache didn't speak. He reached into the water, scooping a handful to wash his face, as though her words were nothing more than wind. For a strange reason, she didn't move away. Something in his stillness calmed her, as though she'd seen him before in a dream or a past she didn't remember. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and deep. "This was our river. Before it was yours." The simplicity of his words cut through her. The truth of it echoed in the water between them. She nodded, unsure what else to say. "I'm Elara," she murmured after a moment. He looked at her, eyes the color of storm clouds. "Taza," he said then, as if nothing in the world were forbidden. He turned his gaze toward the horizon, where the sky burned crimson and violet. Elara's fear melted into something else, curiosity maybe, or the haunting pull of loneliness. When he moved closer, she didn't stop him. The river carried the warmth of their bodies in small circles, the air thick with tension neither could name. No words, just the sound of water, breathing, and the distant cry of a hawk. But then a branch cracked from the riverbank. Elara turned sharply. Through the trees, a shadow moved, someone watching. Taza's expression hardened instantly. He glanced at her once, then vanished into the trees with the silent grace of a wolf. Elara stood frozen in the shallows, heart-pounding. By the time she reached the bank and pulled on her dress, the watcher was gone. But she knew Bitter Creek well enough to know secrets never stayed buried long. When she returned to town, the sheriff and 2 townsmen were waiting outside her shop. They looked her up and down, their faces unreadable. "Evenin', Mrs. Jennings," Sheriff Cole said, tipping his hat slow. "You have yourself an interesting swim?" Elara's heart stopped. "What do you mean?" "Words travelin' fast," he said, stepping closer. "A few boys ridden near the ridge said they saw you down by the river, with one of them Apache warriors." The men behind him smirked, spitting tobacco into the dirt. Elara's throat tightened. "That's a lie." Cole tilted his head. "Maybe, maybe not. But I'd watch myself if I were you. Town don't take kindly to mixed company." As she locked the door behind her that night, Elara couldn't shake the feeling that the river hadn't just washed away dust and sweat. It had uncovered something dangerous. Something the whole town would soon taste like blood and scandal. By morning, Bitter Creek was alive with whispers. The town had always been hungry for gossip, but this was a feast. They said the widow Jennings was seen naked as a trout in the river with an Apache warrior. They said he kissed her hands. They said she let him. Each retelling added new sins, new flourishes of imagination, until Elara's name was dragged through the dust of every saloon floor. She kept her head high as she opened the doors of Jennings Mercantile, though her hands trembled when she turned the sign to open. The bell above the door jingled all morning, but not for customers-only gawkers pretending to browse, eyes sharp with judgment. By noon, she could barely stand the whispers. "That her?" A woman hissed to her friend by the sugar barrels. "Took a bath with a savage, they say. Her poor husband's grave ain't even cold yet." Elara slammed the ledger shut and said coldly, "You want sugar or not?" The women scurried out, skirts swishing. When the bell fell silent again, she pressed her hands to the counter and let out a shaky breath. Her heart ached not just from shame, but from confusion. She had bathed in that river. Taza had been there. But what she remembered wasn't filth or sin. It was peace. Like the world had gone quiet for the first time in years. That night she couldn't sleep. The walls of the mercantile creaked with wind. She thought of Taza, his calm eyes, his voice that sounded like thunder hidden in clouds. Why had he come? And why couldn't she stop thinking about him? Just before dawn, a soft knock sounded at her back door. She froze, her breath caught in her throat. The knock came again, 3 slow taps. Elara reached for her late husband's shotgun, then opened the door just enough to see a figure standing in the faint light. "Taza," she whispered. He stood there barefoot, his skin glistening faintly from the mist, wearing a leather vest and bone necklace. There was something raw, wild, and heartbreakingly human about him. "You shouldn't have come here," she said, glancing around. "If they see you, they already saw," he said quietly. "They watched from the trees. That's why they talk now." Her stomach twisted. "You knew?" He nodded. "They wanted to shame you. Then why didn't you stop them?" She hissed. "You left me there." Taza's jaw tightened. "If I had fought, more blood would have been spilled. I came back to warn you. There are men who mean you harm now. They will ride tonight." Elara blinked. "Ride? For what?" "They think you helped me," he said. "They think you're hiding me." She felt her knees weaken. "Good Lord." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I can keep you safe, Elara Jennings. But you must leave this place. Now." She looked into his eyes and saw no deceit, only quiet urgency. Still, leaving Bitter Creek meant abandoning everything she'd built. Her store, her home, the life she'd fought to keep. "Taza," she said softly, "if I go with you, they'll never let me come back." He stared at her for a long moment. "Then don't come back." A chill ran through her. The way he said it like a promise, not a threat. Like he saw something in her she hadn't seen in herself. Before she could answer, hoofbeats thundered in the distance. Torches flared against the horizon. Elara's heart lurched. "They're coming," Taza said. "Now." He grabbed her hand, pulling her through the back door into the dark alley behind the mercantile. The smell of smoke and sweat filled the night air as shouts echoed down the main street. "Where is she?" A man roared. "Where's the Apache's whore?" Elara's blood ran cold. Taza led her through the narrow streets, swift and silent, toward the open desert beyond the town. They reached the river just as gunfire cracked behind them. A bullet struck a post inches from Elara's head. She gasped, stumbling. Taza caught her arm, pulling her behind a boulder. "Stay low," he murmured. In the flicker of torchlight, she saw men on horseback searching the bank's faces twisted in hate. One of them was Sheriff Cole. Taza's eyes met hers. "They will not stop." Elara swallowed hard, trembling, torn between fear and something deeper, a strange, fierce trust. The same river where their eyes had first met now shimmered under the moon. Waiting. "Then take me," she whispered, "before they find me." Taza nodded once, his expression unreadable, and together they disappeared into the wilderness beyond Bitter Creek, leaving behind the town, the scandal, and the first sparks of something neither could name. The desert had a cruel beauty under moonlight. The wind sang across the dunes, whispering secrets older than any town or man. Elara rode behind Taza, her arms wrapped tightly around his waist as his horse cut through the night like a shadow. Behind them, Bitter Creek smoldered in the distance, its torches flickering out, its hatred echoing faintly in the wind. By dawn, they stopped near a dry ravine scattered with mesquite trees. The air was sharp, cold, and quiet. Taza dismounted, motioning for her to follow. "Here," he said softly, leading her toward a cluster of rocks that concealed a small hollow. Inside, a trickle of water seeped through a crack in the stone, a desert spring, hidden and alive. Elara sank to her knees, cupping the water to her lips. It was cool and clean. When she looked up, Taza was watching her, not with lust or pity, but something deeper. "You know this place?" she asked. He nodded. "My people once camped here, before your soldiers came." She lowered her gaze. "I didn't send them." "I know," he said. "But the river remembers." They were silent for a long time. The morning light crept across the desert, warming the stones. Elara felt exhaustion catch up with her, but fear kept her awake. "What will they do to my shop?" she whispered finally. Taza looked toward the horizon. "Burn it, or take it. To punish what they do not understand." She swallowed, her throat tightening. "Then I've lost everything." He knelt beside her. "Not everything. You still have your life." For a moment, neither spoke. A hawk circled high above them, its cry fading into the wind. Elara thought of Bitter Creek, the wooden shelves she dusted every morning, the little bell that chimed above the door. All gone because she'd bathed in a river beside a man the town feared. And yet, as she looked at Taza, she felt no regret. Only confusion and something dangerously close to gratitude. "Why me?" she asked suddenly. "You could have gone anywhere. Why risk coming to that river?" Taza's jaw tightened. He stood, looking toward the north where the mountains rose like the bones of the earth. "I came for a reason. There was a man in Bitter Creek who once promised my people peace. Instead, he led soldiers to our camp. My mother, my brother, they died in the fire." Elara's stomach dropped. "Who was he?" "Elara Jennings," Taza said quietly. The name struck her like a bullet. Her husband. The man buried behind the mercantile, whose portrait still hung above her hearth. She stumbled back. "No, that's not possible." Eli was a traitor, not a soldier. "He traded guns for gold," Taza said, eyes cold with memory. "Guns that killed children. He gave them maps. He led them there." Elara's heart pounded. "You're lying." "I have no reason to lie," Taza said. "I came to find his grave, to see if the man who destroyed my blood was finally gone." She stared at him, trembling. The words cut through her like a knife. She wanted to scream, to deny it, but deep down, she knew Eli had secrets. There were nights he came home smelling of whiskey and gunpowder. There were ledgers he kept locked, papers he burned. She'd never asked. She'd been too afraid to know. Taza's expression softened as he saw the truth dawn in her eyes. "You did not know." "No," she whispered. "God help me, I didn't." He turned away, the wind tugging at his hair. "Now you understand why they hate me, why they would never let peace live in Bitter Creek." Elara felt tears sting her eyes. And yet, you saved me. He looked at her then, something unreadable flickering in his gaze. Because the sins of one man do not belong to another. Your husband's ghost burned my people, not you. The silence that followed was thick with unspoken things, grief, guilt, the strange mercy between two enemies bound by loss. As the sun climbed higher, Taza began to gather dry brush and flint. Rest, we travel by night. Elara watched him work, the muscles in his back shifting under the light. He was all contradictions, fierce yet gentle, broken yet whole. And in that moment, she realized something terrifying. She wasn't just running from Bitter Creek anymore. She was running toward him. The desert night was colder than Elara expected. Wind swept across the dunes like whispers from the dead. Taza had built a small fire in the hollow between two sandstone ridges, its light flickering against his bare chest as he sharpened his knife with slow, rhythmic strokes. Elara sat nearby, wrapped in a worn blanket he had given her. She couldn't stop her mind from circling the same unbearable thought her late husband, Elara Jennings, the man she had mourned for years, had destroyed Taza's family. The revelation burned inside her like acid. You said my husband gave them maps, she said quietly, staring into the fire. You're sure of it? Taza nodded. He rode with the soldiers. He promised them silver veins under our sacred mountain. But the only thing they found there was blood. Elara pressed her hand over her mouth. She could still see Eli's smile, the charming merchant who'd wooed her with talk of prosperity and peace. But now that smile seemed hollow, like a mask carved from lies. I didn't know, she whispered again, though it sounded weaker each time she said it. I believe you, Taza replied simply. His voice carried no accusation, no anger, only truth. The kind of truth that couldn't be softened. A silence fell between them, broken only by the crackle of the fire. The stars overhead stretched wide and cold, watching like old gods. Why didn't you kill me that night? She asked suddenly. If you came to find his grave, why not take your vengeance through me? Taza's knife paused. He looked up, eyes glinting in the firelight. Because vengeance does not fill the belly. It does not bring the dead home. Elara's heart thudded. Then what do you want from me? He studied her for a long time. To understand why a man who had everything chose to destroy what he could not own. Your husband lied to both our people. Maybe through you, I will learn why. She turned her gaze away, ashamed. I can't explain him. I barely knew him by the end. Taza went quiet again. After a moment, he stood, scanning the horizon. His expression darkened. They followed us, he said. Elara's blood ran cold. Who? He pointed toward a faint glimmer in the distance, moving lights, torches, men from Bitter Creek. How? She whispered. Tracks, he said simply. Even the desert keeps footprints. He grabbed his rifle and motioned for her to rise. We leave, now. Elara stumbled after him, her blanket slipping off her shoulders. The fire was smothered with a swift kick of sand, and they melted into the shadows. The sound of hooves echoed faintly, now men shouting, dogs barking. They ran along the rocky ledge, their breath ragged in the cold air. Taza's hand found hers, steady and strong, pulling her when she faltered. The moonlight painted his skin silver, the muscles of his back moving like living stone. They reached a narrow canyon cut through the cliffs. The air there was still, the walls rising high on either side. Taza stopped, crouched low, and listened. They are close, he murmured. Too close. Elara clutched his arm. What do we do? He turned to her, eyes fierce. We make them believe we vanished into the rock. Before she could ask how, he led her to a split in the canyon wall, a narrow crevice barely wide enough for two. Inside, the darkness was complete. He pressed her gently back against the cold stone, his breath warm against her ear. Do not move, he whispered. Outside, the men's voices grew louder. They went this way. One shouted. The sound of hooves and metal clanked against the canyon's floor. Elara's heart pounded so loud she feared they'd hear it. Taza's body was inches from hers, his chest rising and falling with slow control. His scent smoke, leather, earth filled the air around her. The riders passed, their torches throwing brief streaks of orange light across the rocks. One man stopped right outside their hiding place. He spat, muttered something about the Apache devil, then rode on. When the sounds finally faded, Elara exhaled shakily. She realized she'd been holding her breath the whole time. Taza stepped back, his hand brushing her arm in the dark. "You are brave," he said quietly. She met his eyes, barely visible in the faint moonlight. "I'm terrified." He gave a small nod. "Fear is not weakness. Only those with hearts still beating can feel it." Outside, the wind returned, whispering through the canyon like a sigh of relief. As dawn broke, they emerged from the shadows. Far behind them, smoke rose on the horizon, Bitter Creek still burning with its hate. Elara looked at Taza and felt something shift. It wasn't love yet. It was deeper respect, trust, and the dangerous beginning of something she couldn't name. By dusk, they reached the edge of Hollow Ridge, a place so forgotten that even the vultures circled it with hesitation. The canyon narrowed into a thin pass, and beyond it stood a crumbling mining cabin, half swallowed by the desert. Its roof sagged, and its windows were nothing but black holes staring out over emptiness. Taza stopped, studying it in silence. "This will do for tonight," he said. Elara slid from the horse, her legs trembling. The ride had been long and silent, filled with the ghosts of everything left unsaid. The sun burned low behind the cliffs, painting the sand in bruised shades of purple and gold. Was this a mining outpost? She asked quietly. Taza nodded once. "White men dug here years ago, looking for gold. Found only bones." Elara shivered. The air felt heavier here, as if history itself hung in the dust. Still, she followed him inside. The cabin smelled of age and ashes. A rusted stove leaned in one corner, and a broken chair lay splintered across the floor. Taza lit a small fire in the hearth with flint, the glow painting shadows across the rough walls. He gestured for her to sit. "Rest, I will keep watch." But Elara shook her head. "No, I can't sleep. Not yet." She pulled her knees close, staring into the fire. "When you said Eli traded guns for gold, I remembered something." Taza looked at her sharply. "What did you remember?" "There was a trunk he kept locked under our bed. I never looked inside. He said it was old papers, shipping ledgers and invoices. But I think he hid more than that." Taza's expression darkened. "That trunk's still at your store?" "Unless they burned it," she said bitterly. "But if it survived, it might hold proof of what he did." He stood, pacing. "Proof means nothing to men who hate what they fear. But it might mean something to you." She looked up at him. "To me?" He stopped beside her. "You carry his name, his sins. You deserve to see what they cost." Elara swallowed hard. "You want to go back there, don't you?" His silence was answer enough. "You'll be killed," she whispered. Taza's jaw tightened. "Maybe. But if I don't go back, my people will remain ghosts blamed for a white man's greed. The truth must be seen, even if no one believes it." The firelight flickered against his skin, tracing the scars across his chest. Elara felt a strange ache rise within her, not just fear, but admiration. There was something unbreakable about him, something that belonged to the earth itself. "Then I'm going with you," she said firmly. His eyes met hers, dark, steady, unreadable. "You cannot." "I can," she insisted. "You said my husband's ghost burned your people. Maybe it's time I helped lay him to rest." For a long moment, Taza said nothing. Then slowly he nodded. At dawn, the desert outside had gone still, a silence so deep it felt sacred. Elara wrapped the blanket tighter around herself as Taza crouched near the fire, feeding it small twigs. You were married long? He asked suddenly. 7 years, she said softly. He was kind in the beginning. Then he changed. Greed does that to a man. I told myself it was just the drink. But I think the darkness was there all along. Taza's gaze softened. When the fire takes hold, it spreads fast. They sat in silence after that, the kind that didn't need to be broken. The flames danced between them, a thin line of light separating two worlds, one of sorrow, the other of survival. Then a sound broke the stillness, a soft metallic creak. From beneath the floorboards. Taza rose immediately, knife in hand. He motioned for Elara to stay back, then crouched, prying up one of the loose planks. Beneath it lay a small, rusted box wrapped in oiled cloth. He lifted it carefully and set it on the table. The latch was corroded but still intact. Elara's pulse quickened as Taza forced it open with the tip of his knife. Inside, under a layer of dust, lay a stack of yellowed documents and a revolver with the initials EJ engraved on the grip. Elara gasped. That's Eli's gun. Taza's eyes narrowed as he picked up one of the papers. This is a map of the Apache lands. Her throat went dry. He was here, she whispered. This cabin, he used it. Taza's face hardened. Then your husband's ghost never left Bitter Creek. He buried his sins in this desert. Outside, thunder rolled faintly across the distant hills, though no storm was near. Elara met his eyes. Then we dig them up. The wind howled across Hollow Ridge that night, carrying the scent of sage and gunpowder. Inside the ruined cabin, the fire crackled low, painting golden scars of light across Elara's face. Taza sat near the doorway, his body still and watchful, his eyes fixed on the darkness beyond the canyon. They'll come by morning, he said quietly, voice low like distant thunder. The riders. The men from Bitter Creek. Elara swallowed hard, her fingers tightening around the edge of her blanket. You mean my husband's men? He nodded once. They wear his memory like armor. But they do not know what kind of man he was. Elara turned toward him. Tell me then, she said softly. Tell me what he did. Taza looked into the fire for a long time before answering. He came to our land when the river still ran clear. Promised peace. Promised trade. But peace was never his way. He burned our fields. Took the gold from our mountains. Killed the children who tried to run. Elara's lips trembled. You mean Henry? He led them, Taza said, voice flat. He was the one who shot my brother in the back. For a long moment, there was only the sound of the wind pushing through the cracks in the walls. Elara's face crumpled. Her mind reeled, memories of her husband's cold silences and late-night rides twisting into something darker. I never knew, she whispered. I thought he was a good man. Taza rose slowly, his powerful frame lit by the firelight, his long black hair flowing around his shoulders like a shadow come to life. You were not meant to know, he said gently. Men like him hide behind soft lies and gentle words. Elara stood, stepping closer to him. Then why did you come back, Taza? After all this time? He looked down at her, his expression unreadable. To end what he began, he said. To take back the gold your husband stole. To make peace for my dead. She met his gaze, her eyes glistening. And me? Why save me? Taza's eyes softened. Because when I saw you in that river, you did not look like him. You looked like someone who had also been left behind. The words hung in the air between them, soft, dangerous, true. The flames danced higher. throwing shadows that made it look like the two of them stood alone against the whole world. Outside, thunder rolled. The night cracked open with the sound of approaching hooves. Elara's heart leapt. "They've found us." Taza grabbed his knife and turned to her. "Go into the cellar," he ordered. "Stay low. Don't make a sound." But Elara shook her head. "I won't hide." Before he could answer, the cabin door exploded inward. Men flooded in, faces twisted with fury, guns raised, voices shouting. "There he is! The savage!" One of them screamed. The first gunshot shattered the air. Sparks flew as a bullet struck the iron stove beside Taza. He lunged forward, moving like lightning, tackling the nearest man to the ground and sending his rifle flying. "Stop!" Elara cried. But it was too late. The cabin erupted into chaos, smoke, fire, blood. Taza fought like something wild, like the spirit of the land itself had risen to defend him. Every muscle, every motion was sharp and precise. A bullet grazed his shoulder, blood streaking across his brown skin. Then one of the riders turned his gun toward Elara. She froze. Time slowed. Before she could move, Taza roared an animal sound that shook the walls and threw himself between her and the bullet. The gun fired. Taza staggered, the impact slamming through his chest. Elara screamed, catching him as he fell to his knees. The men backed away, eyes wide not from guilt, but from fear. The air inside the cabin seemed to tremble. The fire burned blue for a moment, as if the earth itself mourned. Elara's tears fell onto his skin. "No, Taza, please, no." He looked up at her, his breath ragged but his eyes calm. "Don't. Let them take what's left," he whispered. "Not the gold. Not your soul." Then his hand fell from hers. The men hesitated at the sight, the woman they once called their own kneeling beside the dying Apache warrior. None of them spoke. None dared step closer. Outside, lightning flashed across the desert sky, and as the rain began to fall, it washed the blood from the dirt floor of Hollow Ridge. Elara lifted her head slowly, her expression no longer of grief but of rage. "They took everything from him," she said quietly. "Now I'll take everything from them." The wind howled through the canyon, and the fire inside the cabin blazed anew just as a shadow of a storm gathered over Bitter Creek. The storm that began at Hollow Ridge rolled all the way into Bitter Creek before dawn. Rain came down in sheets, washing dust and ash from the streets, soaking the wooden buildings until they creaked like tired bones. Elara rode into town alone. Her dress was torn, her hair clung to her face and mud streaked her arms, but her eyes burned with something fierce and wordless. Across her lap lay a small bundle wrapped in hide, the same pouch Taza had once carried, marked with the turquoise beads of his people. People stepped out from their porches as she passed. Men who'd once tipped their hats to her now stared in silence. Women who whispered her name in gossip now hid behind their curtains. Bitter Creek had never seen her like this, alive with storm and vengeance. At the far end of town stood the Iron Spur Saloon, where Henry Jennings's old partners were drinking by the light of oil lamps. They were the same men who had ridden to Hollow Ridge, the same men whose guns had killed Taza. Elara dismounted, her boots sinking into the wet earth. She pushed open the saloon doors. The chatter stopped. Every man in that room turned to look at her. "Mrs. Jennings," one of them said cautiously, "you should be home. You've had a rough night." Elara smiled faintly, though her eyes were cold. "Yes," she said, "a rough night and a lifetime of lies." She set the pouch down on the bar. When she unwrapped it, gold dust spilled out, glittering even in the dull lamplight. But it wasn't the gold that made the men pale, it was the folded parchment inside. She unfolded it slowly and read aloud. "A confession," she said. signed by Henry Jennings, detailing the massacre at Red Creek, the gold stolen from the Apache mines, the killings, the burning of their homes. One of the men slammed his glass down. "You lie." Elara met his eyes without flinching. "No," he wrote it himself. "I found it hidden under the floorboards next to the rifle he used on Taza's brother." The room went still. Even the piano player froze. Another man, older and gray-bearded, spoke up. "Even if it's true, what's it matter now? He's dead. So's that savage." At that, Elara's voice broke, but not from weakness. "That savage saved me," she said. "He could have left me to die, but he didn't. He fought for me. He bled for me. He was more man than any of you ever were." Her hand drifted toward the revolver on her hip. The men tensed. "I won't kill you," she said finally. "But you'll pay. Every ounce of that gold will go back to where it came from the Apache. I'll see to it myself." The gray-bearded man sneered. "You think you can take on Bitter Creek alone?" Elara's gaze was like iron. "I'm not alone." And as if the earth itself heard her, thunder rumbled outside. Through the rain came the faint sound of horses' many horses. The saloon doors burst open. Outside, under the storm, stood a band of Apache riders, faces painted, weapons gleaming. They did not speak, but their presence filled the street like judgment itself. For a moment, no one breathed. Elara stepped aside, motioning toward the men in the saloon. "These are the ones," she said quietly. The Apache chief, an older warrior with the same turquoise beads as Taza, nodded once. "You have done right, woman of rain," he said in accented English. "The spirits will remember you." The townsmen dropped their guns. Some tried to run. None made it far. The Apache did not slaughter them. They simply took back what was theirs: gold, horses, justice. And when it was done, they rode away as silently as they had come, disappearing into the storm. Elara stood in the rain long after the hooves had faded. Her heart felt hollow, but lighter somehow, as if something sacred had been set right. At dawn, she rode back to Hollow Ridge. The cabin was a ruin, still smoldering in places, but near the spring where they had first camped, the earth was soft and green again. She knelt there, placing Taza's turquoise necklace on the stone beside the water. "You were right," she whispered. "Peace isn't something you find, it's something you make." The sun broke through the clouds then, casting a single beam of light across the canyon. The wind lifted her hair, and for a moment, she thought she heard him, Taza's voice, soft and low. Like the whisper of the desert itself, "You are not alone." Elara of the white sky. She smiled faintly through her tears. Then she stood, turning her horse toward the horizon. The last rain of Bitter Creek faded behind her, and with it, the echoes of a town forever changed by one woman's courage and the love of a man they never truly understood. And when the story spread through the frontier as stories always do, every man in town would remember the woman who rode into the storm and brought the truth down with her. The woman who avenged the Apache. The woman who carried the rain.